I really think that the majority of people spend most of their time in a state of readiness in their life. They're always ready for whatever's going to take place. And it's like an idol. So the hormones that are associated with getting up and going and reacting stressfully, those hormones are hormones that create a primitive mechanism where we go into survival, right? And living in stress and living in survival is not a time for us to open our hearts, right? So get bruised, get damaged, get injured in your life. The stronger the emotion you feel towards that event in your life, the more altered you feel from that experience. The brain freezes a frame and takes a snapshot, and that's called a long-term memory. So people think about the problems that happened in the past, and they produce the same chemistry in their brain and body as if the event was happening. So what happens is the body gets conditioned emotionally into the past. So now the trauma or the betrayal is not just in the brain now, it's in the body. So the body, in a sense, gets programmed or conditioned to stay in survival. And when you're in survival, it's not a time to be vulnerable. It's not a time to open our hearts. It's not a time to create. It's in a state of arousal where we have to keep our attention on things that matter, the things in our environment, the way our body is feeling and how we're managing ourselves, and time in and of itself. So to change is to be greater than your body, to be greater than your environment, and to be greater than time. And so when we're stressed, it's really hard to change. When we're stressed, it's really not a time to change. It's not a time to create, and it's not a time to learn. So then this is a mechanism that's primitive in our biology. And to be able to tame the animal so that the animal self, so it's no longer in a state of readiness, trying to always predict the worst case scenario, just so you could be ready if it happens. Turns out that that's the conversion of those survival states into a state of creation. We've discovered some really important things about it. And if you teach people how to convert from that sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system, if you teach them how to trade resentment and impatience and frustration, justified or not, that's doing no good for you, for an elevated emotion, and practice making the chemistry that is associated with love. And in the beginning, it's difficult. And so if you place your attention on your heart, we discovered that there's a very low frequency that you can measure that actually goes up, that's indigenous to what the heart needs in terms of a life force to beat. So where you place your attention is where you place your energy, and all the things you can place your attention on, place it on your heart. Now, slow your breathing down. And if you can slow your breathing down, you can take your body out of that state of readiness. And when you slow your breathing down, you slow your brain waves down, and your body starts to move out of that state of sympathetic arousal. Practice feeling elevated emotions with your heart: kindness, care, love, appreciation, gratitude. And you'll get good at feeling that way if you keep doing it. So then, when a person's in that state, the heart in and of itself, when it's activated like that, gets super organized. It gets coherent, and it sends a signal to the brain, literally in the form of information, to tell the brain, the survival system, to shut down, that the amygdala, literally, the lights go out. It resets the baseline for the trauma in the brain, and the body moves out of survival. And now it wants to create, and the heart informs the brain to get creative, and the brain goes into these beautiful, organized alpha brainwave patterns. And in alpha, we tend to imagine, we tend to create, we tend to dream. So the heart informs the brain. It's time to create. That's, I think, when we're in that state of inspiration where we're actually falling in love with what we're creating. We're bonding to that creation. And the stronger the emotion we feel, the more we remember that future. And I think that's how people really begin to make those changes. Now, getting there is a daily practice. Getting there is something that you have to keep doing. So the block for us to feel love is that if we're living in survival, you have to make up your mind that that state is not a state to create, and break away from the people in your life and your schedule and your phone and all the obligations you have long enough to reset just for a little period of time and to remember. Yeah. So you don't forget. I think that's where it becomes super valuable. I think, once again, the stronger the emotion you feel from some event in your life, the more altered you are inside of you, the more you remember the event. The brain actually freezes that frame, right? So the person thinks neurologically within the circuitry of that experience. and they feel chemically within the boundaries of that emotion. And how we think and how we feel becomes our state of being. So every time they remember the event, they're producing that same chemistry, as I said, over and over again. And you're conditioning the body into a belief, right? And the moment we draw a conclusion about that experience, that's the belief, right? That becomes the belief that we accept to, believe, and surrender to. So then beliefs are subconscious states of being, right? So, and it tends to be 95% of who we are by the time we get to the middle of our life. So it's those subconscious beliefs that really run our life and run our reality. So it would make sense then to the person, unless I can heal from the experience and overcome the emotion, because the memory without the emotional charge is called wisdom, and you never have to do it again because you know now that you know. If that's the truth, then okay, I'll do this for a period of time, but this state is not loving to me. Living in this state is not loving to me. What's loving to me is that I actually overcome the emotion of the past. And when I overcome the emotion of the past, now the body's no longer believing in that any longer, right? So that theoretically is easier said than done. So the survival emotions tend to become very addictive. So the rush of just remembering the event is an arousal for the body, and people become very addicted to their beliefs, right? But if you tell a person like, okay, your subconscious mind is going to keep replaying the same experience in your life unless you heal, okay, that could make sense to certain people. If you can't overcome that emotion, then you'll never be able to open your heart. So do you want love in your life or not? Okay. Forgiveness then, and we've discovered this. Forgiveness is when you overcome the emotion of your past and you no longer have your attention on that person or that experience any longer, right? And so you feel so good that you no longer want to feel bad, right? And so you free yourself from that belief, and you free that person as well, or the experience. And literally that's energy that's liberated as information that the body can actually use to create with. I think there's information and knowledge that just has to be given to people for them to understand, okay, justified or not, valid or not. The only person that this really is affecting is me. They went on with their life. They started a new career. They're living in a new place. They're writing a book. They're on their way, and you're holding yourself hostage to the past, right? So then you got to trust that love is available, or love is real. And in order for you to create someone in your life that is loving, you would have to be worthy of love. And that means you would have to feel love too. I think people make their way out of this all the time. And we deal with severe PTSD, with veterans. And there's some pretty brutal memories there. And there's a lot of trauma that's stored in the body as well. And they deal with a lot of difficulties. And when you tell them it's the heart that resets the baseline for the trauma in the brain, all you have to do is have the courage to open that thing again. And they may come up against themselves for a few days, but once it happens, and they understand the process, their past is wisdom. They don't have to ever go back there again, right? They understand it all, but there's no charge associated with it any longer. And that's when we belong to the future, right? That's when the synchronicities and the coincidences and the miracles and the opportunities begin to show up in our life to prove to us that we are the creators of our life.
What's the anatomy of belief?
So I believe that all beliefs are created from past experiences. And a belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again until you hardwired in your brain. And a hardwired set of circuits is an automatic unconscious program. So we have a lot of beliefs about things that we're not even conscious of. And this happens quite a bit in the work that we do. People see the testimonials, they see the science, they see the data, and they say, oh my God, I actually believe that this stuff works. And they're facing a chronic health condition or serious health condition. And they come to the realization that they just became conscious that they didn't believe it would work for them. It looks like it works, but I never thought it could work for me. Now, this is a big moment, because this is the moment where you're stepping out of the bleachers onto the playing field, right? This is now where you got to show up for yourself, right? The person, when they sit down and they decide to make a different choice, and this is the hardest part about change. The moment you decide to make a different choice, you're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to leave the familiar known, right? And the body, which has been conditioned into the past, into the known, which has been conditioned to be the mind, the servant's the master, and it's going to try to talk you out of that future that is unfamiliar, unknown, or unpredictable. And so that's the moment where the beliefs start coming up. You're not good enough. This is too hard. You'll never change. You can't create anything. It's this person's fault. There's something wrong with me. I want to quit. And then people say like, oh, well, I have ADD. I can't focus my mind. And it turns out they say I'm not a good meditator, or I can't control my mind, and meditation's not for me. But really, I'm doing it wrong, they'll say. But in fact, they're actually doing it right. Because sitting with yourself and becoming conscious of all of those unconscious thoughts means now you're no longer the program. You're only the program when you're unconscious to that belief. The moment you become conscious of that unconscious belief, the greater the probability that you won't go unconscious to it again. And that's how you become more conscious, is catching yourself going unconscious, and it becomes a skill. The more you practice it, the better you get at going like, I'm just not going to believe that any longer. And nerve cells that no longer fire together, no longer wire together. So as you attend to that thought and notice it and observe it without actually believing it, it weakens the connections neurologically in the brain. And there's neurological death or a separation that's taking place. Okay, so the person then who blames and complains and makes excuses and feels sorry for themselves and behaves a certain way, well, those are habits, right? And those are unconscious programmed behaviors. The only way you're going to change is to become conscious that you complain all day long or you blame somebody for your life. A happy person would never want to be that, want to behave that way, and would never want to be in a relationship with a person who complains all the time. Why would you, right? So then that person says, okay, how many times do I have to forget until I stop forgetting and start remembering? That is my moment of change. So today I'm going to behave in a different way and make a different choice. I'm going to just stay conscious to not do these things. Okay. And then the person says, well, I feel unworthy. I feel stressed. I feel unhappy. I feel sad. I feel victimized. I feel grief, whatever. Is this the emotion that I want to have in my future? Well, no, these are emotions that are connected to experiences of the past. If I truly want love in my life, I can't feel resentment. Okay, am I willing to trade resentment for this elevated emotion? Okay, let me just remember all the times in my day, if I start noticing I feeling this emotion, I'm just going to become conscious and not go unconscious to it and just temper it and work with it. Okay, so that is that overcoming process. That is the becoming process. Now, it would make sense then, you would have to ask yourself, what do I want to believe? What is a thought that I do want to fire and wire in my brain? So with intention and with attention, if you had the person remember what they wanted to believe and keep remembering what they want to believe and keep remembering what they want to believe, they begin to install the hardware. If you keep attending to it, the hardware becomes like a software program. And now that's the new belief. I can heal. I can find the relationship. And belief is like pregnancy. Either you are or you're not. I mean, there's no in between. So you want to install the circuitry to such a degree that that's the new voice in your head that's saying, come on, Jay, get up. Come on, Jay, let's go. Come on, you can do this. Come on, make the time for it. Come on, this is your vision. Come on.
Coach in your own head.
It's a voice.
Yeah, a voice.
The voice is no longer the disbelief. The voice is basically your future self talking to you is what it is. It's your future. All right. So if I start behaving in the old way, I know I'm going to disbelieve. So how do I want to behave? How am I going to behave on my next date? How am I going to behave on my next Zoom meeting with my team? How am I going to behave with my children or in my family or with my partner, with my ex? How do I want to be? And the act of rehearsing mentally in your mind who you want to be, the act of just closing your eyes and mentally rehearsing that scene literally causes the brain to look like you already did it. It looks like it's already happened, right? So now you're priming the brain neurologically. Keep doing it over and over again. The hardware becomes more automatic like a software program. You naturally get your behaviors to match your intentions, and because you installed the circuitry. Practice feeling the elevated emotion. If you feel that emotion and you say, when I feel this emotion, I can believe in that future, then let me just keep remembering to feel this way in every part of my day. And this is not about positive thinking. This is about conditioning my body emotionally into the future. So I got to keep my energy up the entire day, and I can't default back to the old person. As long as I'm feeling this emotion, I'm going to behave that way. As long as I'm feeling this emotion, I'm going to believe in that future. If I maintain this modified state of mind and body my entire day as an experiment, should there be some evidence in my life as a result of my change in state of being, a synchronicity, a coincidence? And if there is, then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to actually do it again. And I think that's how we start stepping into that future. So react and respond to conditions that cause you to feel the emotions of survival. Your reaction or your response to that condition, to that challenge, will actually weaken your body if you keep doing it over and over again. Stress consumes enormous amounts of energy for the body. So the repetition of that begins to downregulate genes and create disease. And so if you can turn on the stress response just by thinking about that problem, your thoughts could make you sick. So the question is, can your thoughts make you well? And so we said to people, okay, trade resentment and impatience and frustration for an elevated emotion like gratitude or appreciation, kindness, and care. We'll hook you up to a heart rate monitor. We want to make sure that your heart is coherent so we know that you're actually feeling these emotions. So could a person then create an elevated emotion, and the body is so objective that it does not know the difference between a real life experience that's creating that emotion and the emotion that that person is fabricating by thought alone. To the body, it's the unconscious mind. It's the same. So if the person feels the elevated emotion, feeling elevated emotions causes the body to upregulate genes and allow the immune system to repair and regenerate. Now, body is greater than the environment. So if people just set the intention in the beginning of their day, and we've all done this, and gone unconscious within the first hour, whatever it takes for that person, if it is before they sit down and eat lunch, that they check in with themselves and see if they've fallen from grace, or if they're still in that state or where they're at. If they do it on their break, the person who's possessed in a good way, when they understand, like, when I change, my life changes, and nothing changes in my life until I change, a person who's really, really committed to that, they will constantly be checking in with themselves because they're paying more attention to their inner world. They're paying more attention to themselves and less attention to everybody else. They're really regulating their state. So any reminder a person has, and I do this sometimes 3 times a day, I have to break away and remember, like, I'm losing it. Like my energy's dropping. And in the light of all eternity, this moment matters more than anything else because it's never going to be the right time. It's never going to be the right time when you feel that emotion. If I could convert right now, and when it's the hardest, it matters the most. If I can just get back into my heart and change my state, synchronize my heart to my brain, if I can do that in 15 minutes and come back out, will I see reality differently? Okay, let me practice that. I tend to be more patient. I tend to be more aware. I think the heart is a different consciousness. I tend to be more considerate, more present. I think that's the side effect of doing it. So change is about reminding yourself over and over again. Change is about the overcoming process. The overcoming process is actually the becoming process. And people all the time that heal in this work, they're doing their meditations. They're not doing their meditations to heal. They're doing their meditations to change. And they've discovered that when they change, they heal. So now, if you accept that as a new belief that when I change, my life will change. And you got to keep reminding yourself of that belief.
You got to keep saying
You got to keep reminding yourself, if I change, because this goes against the program. Like, when my life changes, then I'll change. That's the program. No. When you change, the experiment is, will your life change?
Yes.
Okay. So then now you attack the belief. It's not like, oh my God, this is something that's bigger than me. You attack the belief like, this is no longer serving me. Complaining is making me unhappy. Living by this emotion, justified or not, is not loving to me. This is downregulating genes. My body's believing it's living in the same event 24 hours a day if I feel the same emotion. Okay, well, let's change that. So when the person is taking on that belief, Like if I change, my life changes. And I think most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality. It doesn't work. We got to become somebody else. So if you took that on as the truth, okay, I got to remember that if I change, my health could change. If I change, my life could change. Okay, now it's a different game now. It's not like a have to. This is like I want to change to see my life change, right? It's more of a want to.